All right, guys, so we're going to talk about hollowing out forms today. We're going to talk about draping the slab over some kind of a mold to make your form, and we're going to talk about making textures. So, we already talked about the basics, pinch pot, slab, and coil. So those are all really good. I mentioned about hollowing out forms in class, but not everyone was there. So let me go ahead and show you this. So let's say that you had a body that was sort of like a potato shape. That would be a little bit tricky to make either with pinch pot or with any of those other methods. It's easier just to make that like a solid form, let it get leather hard, then you can cut it in half with your string, and then you can hollow out the inside by scooping out all of the clay. And then you can score all the edges, add your slip, and stick them together, and then you got yourself a hollow form. So the way that you hollow it out, if you are lucky enough to know a potter, see if you can borrow their ribbon tools, because these things just work fantastic to scoop out the excess clay. You can just grab it and just scoops it right out just like that. However, if you're not lucky enough to know a potter, no problem. You can scoop it with a real scooper like a spoon. See that? You can just go ahead and just start scooping out all that clay. And once you get the thing so that it's hollow and the walls are about a 1/4 inch thick all the way around, then you can score, slip, and seal, and then attach the form there. All right. So remember, don't work with big, fat, solid forms. Your form could be like maybe, 3/4 of an inch at the most, and be okay. But once it starts getting fatter than that, you need to hollow the thing out before you put it together. All right, so hollowing out forms is good, and then draping. I made this turtle shell years ago as part of a clay project in college, and it was really fast and easy to use the draping method because, to make that with pinch pot or the other methods would be a little bit time consuming. So I just rolled out a big flat slab. I made myself a little mold out of newspaper and masking tape. I just crunched up a bunch of newspaper, wrapped a few pieces of masking tape around there, and see, that was like the perfect size for that one. Fit great. So, I also discovered, by the way, the slabs do stick to the cardboard somewhat. It's kind of a pain getting them off of there. I found that even with dry cardboard, it depends on the cardboard, sometimes it'll stick to it. But if you have an old t-shirt, that's what I did. I just stuck an old t-shirt on top of that, so I was planning on recycling it anyway. It's one of my old Garfield t-shirts that has, Garfield Indian stuff on there. So I gotta, do away with that one anyway, since we're changing our mascot. So, that's perfect because it's not gonna stick to your fabric at all. It'll just pop right off. So if you've got an old piece of canvas or an old t-shirt, anything that you don't care about getting messed up, use that. I've got this wrapped around some cardboard there. So I can just take that big wet slab, and then I just drape on top of it. I can just push down all around like this, voila, and I get that beautiful curve that I made. And then once that thing gets firm enough, then I could take it off of the mold and it'll support its own weight. So you see that? So that, that would actually fit fine. You can take your handy dandy cutter there and, cut it to whatever size and shape you're gonna get it. See how it's still wet and sticky? So that's why it's better to wait until this thing is leather hard, because then it's not gonna be sticky like that. It'll actually, cut off much more easily. I might be able to cut that off a little bit better with a needle tool. Yeah, so, you can go ahead and cut off those pieces and, get it to whatever shape you want. I made mine like a regular turtle, well, and then the head would be coming out of here, and then the tail would be coming out of this end. And then I added these other slabs, to create that texture. I could have carved it in there instead, but it was kind of thin, so I added it on there instead of carved into it. All right, so let's talk about textures. How are we gonna get cool textures? Check it out. Here is my old Garfield Indian one. Now he's just a piece of history since we're changing our mascot. But he's kind of goofy looking here. He's got the big googly eyes and he's got lots of texture. He looks pretty cool even before being painted up. And the reason is because of all that texture. So, it's really fun to add textures. I highly recommend it. Here's a slab right here. We can add some textures to it. So, the easiest thing to do is just squish into it, stamp textures into it. You can just use your fingers and create regular patterns and textures. You can use the tools that you got with your clay, so you can just, do repetition that way and make it look like whatever, scaly texture you want in there. You can draw into it like that, really pressing down like that. The wooden one is nice. You can actually make some nice eyeballs With this one, you can do the outside there and then do the inside like that. Oh, God, you probably can't see that very well, but check it out here. I'll do a couple of them so it'll actually look like eyes right here. I gotta get the camera closer. There you go. You can see that better. See the eyes right there. Very nice. So, you know, stamping into it, there's all sorts of stuff you can do. Watch this. You can just roll that lid across there. I got that beautiful texture from that. Look at this dude. Did you notice he's got this funky afro right up there? Look at that cool texture up there. That was created using a simple produce bag, you know, from grapefruit or, you know, some other things. Just gonna press that down on there and voila, look at that. You got that awesome texture right there. I've got a potato masher. Of course, that's gonna leave a cool pattern on there. You know, just anything that you can get a hold of, you can go ahead and get textures on there. And then if they're very delicate, you know, you can go ahead and use your roller to press it down more evenly to get all the detail on there. Like with all these fibers from that burlap, look at that, press down and voila, all those little detailed textures are on there. You know, you can use string, you can use wire, you could use seashells. Look at that interesting spaghetti type of texture right there. We've also got, you know, nuts and bolts that you could do. You can go ahead and just, you know, get the actual texture from that. You can go ahead and go on top of it like this. You can roll it and get all those little lines on there. That's the way I actually made an LP, you know, a vinyl album one time. I made the grooves in it using a screw like that. Or actually, no. It looks like it. It reminds me of it. But actually, what I did was I used a comb like this. I went ahead and went around the whole thing like that. I made like the grooves on an album cover, just with a little busted up old comb there. So that's one way, you know, just stamping into it and then scratching into it. You know, all these tiny little details of the teeth on there, that was done with a pin tool. They look like this. You saw me cutting with it earlier. See these pin tools? These are quite nice for, you know, drawing details. You can be very precise or you can be very spontaneous. And you know, look at all the nice details on this guy right here. He's got all these little stitches and cool textures on there. So, you know, you probably don't have one of these babies, but you could use a push pin. You can use a paper clip, you know, those can give you fine lines. You could use a toothpick, of course. That would work great to get all sorts of details there. So, you know, there's plenty of stuff that you could use to get some nice detailed images on there. And so, yeah, so that would be cutting. You can also cut away from it with your paper clip there, too. You know, instead of just like scratching or stamping, you can actually remove some of the bits of clay like this. You know, as long as it's not too thin, you can actually, you know, cut out parts of it, and that could be quite cool. You know, actually do some little removal to, you know, go down below the surface that way by actually cutting off clay instead of just, you know, stamping into it or scratching things. All right, so we know about stamping, we know about cutting and removing. What about building up the surface? Of course, you can add all sorts of stuff to it. Let's say that we were going to add, you know, some kind of a little spike to it. We saw that dragon in the other video. You know, if you wanted this thing sticking up like that, we can't just go like that, right? What do we have to do? Score, slip, and seal. Remember, score, slip, and seal. So I actually left my slip at school foolishly. I'm doing this thing at home, so I can't actually put the slip on there. But just imagine I've got my slip with me. You know, you'd score where it's going. You'd score the other surface too. Remember, it's like the two parts to a zipper. These are like the teeth in a zipper that are going to get joined together. Imagine, here's my invisible slip right here. I grab a little glob of it, slide that little bit of slip on there, and put it on there. And then, of course, that would definitely stay. So score, slip, and to seal for something decorative like that, since it's not going to support a lot of weight, you can just seal it just with your fingers, or you can smooth it out, you know, with your other tool there to make it really a nice smooth bond there. And then you've got that thing on there permanently. All right, and then you can also do some neat things where you could get like super fine textures. So let's say, for example, if you were going to do like a little fuzzy, grassy kind of a texture, you might remember that dragon pencil holder that I showed you from the other video. It had some really cool fine textures in there. Well, if you've got an old piece of screen, maybe like you changed a window screen recently or a door screen recently, and you know, you got the old one there. Those things actually are great to make tiny little textures. Watch this. Pull this up nice and close. Look at that, it comes right out of there. So you can get those little guys and actually make it part of your clay right there. See all these tiny little textures like that? So what you can do is, you can take your little knife there, and you can't get them individually, but you can take a whole bunch of them with your tool there. See that? I've got a whole cluster of these guys. So then I can just set that in place. I can go ahead and use my paper clip or whatever I've got for scoring, or a fork or something. Score up the surface, and then I get my invisible slip. Of course, it's a real slip. Put your slip on there, and then you can just dab that on there like that, gently from the sides. And amazingly, all those tiny little guys, they will actually stay on there, and you got yourself a cool, really fuzzy texture there. So, that kind of fuzzy texture right there, that would be really cool for facial hair, if your character has a beard or a mustache, or, it could be the hair on the head. It could also be for an animal. I saw somebody that made a sheep, and they covered the whole thing, and it really looked like wool going around there. It could be like a grassy texture if you've got a base and your character is supposed to be outside someplace, and you could cover the base with a texture like that. So lots of cool stuff that you can do. To save your screen for the next time, don't just leave that clay to dry up and get hard in there. That's going to totally mess things up. You can actually save that wet clay and reconstitute it. If you go ahead and squish all this together and wedge the air bubbles out, you can actually save that. So you just squish it on both sides, and then that'll pick up as much as it can for the wet stuff. And then that thin little bit that's still left on there, that'll actually dry quickly. You'll be able to just kind of wiggle it over a trash can, and it'll just pop right out, and you can reuse that. Alrighty, so there you have it. We've got the hollowing out the forms, we got the draping, we got the textures. Let's have some fun. See you guys later.